Hello everyone and welcome back in. Well, this project is going to be the M60A3 with a bulldozer blade, but we're going to discount the bulldozer blade. We're going to leave that off on this one here. Have something a little different in mind. Yep, if you've noticed closely, the top of the box was ripped, it was crushed, but that doesn't matter because the contents are just fine within. Lots of gray plastic to play with. And let's take a quick look at the instruction booklet. It looks all very familiar and straightforward. I don't foresee any problems. As mentioned, we're going to leave off quite a few of these parts, so some of these areas we'll just skip right through. And so here we go, we're off to the races, or maybe I should say we're out to pasture. Well, here's the theme for this project here. I came across these series of M60s all in this Boneyard, someplace, I don't know where, someplace I'm guessing Southwest United States, Arizona, New Mexico, perhaps California, just left out there just in the sunshine enjoying themselves. But I thought this would be a great opportunity to do something a little bit different. You know, we'll do one of these Boneyard vehicles here. And what I want to do is I'm going to pull from a lot of these different vehicles, so different references, and use different elements here and there, not to specifically copy one particular vehicle, but kind of mismatch or mash up all these different vehicles. And then towards the end of this video, we'll get prepared for painting. We'll put some primer on. I'll do some kind of experimental kind of pre-shading here in preparation of the overall camouflage, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Well, let's get started with construction, shall we? Which really means in this case, we're going to do some deconstruction first. Now, again, I mentioned that we're going to kind of pull from different visual cues and interesting features on these reference photographs. And one of the first that I noticed when going through these photos was that many of the vehicles have their drive wheels and the drive plates all removed, obviously for ease of movement into the position and salvaging and things like that. So I want to add that feature to this model as well. You can see in this reference that actually both of his drive wheels have been removed, which is a nice feature. I'm going to only take care of one drive wheel in this case because there's some other references I want to kind of incorporate into this model as well. And here's a close-up of that area, so now we've got a nice good visual reference with which to follow. Which means that I need to open up this section here so we can see through this side of the hull here. And first thing I'm going to do is I basically have kind of scored around an area where I kind of want those openings to be. And then just around that periphery, I'm just drilling some very, very small holes. This is a super old school method of how to open up plastic. And then once you have these little holes, it's kind of like dot to dot pattern here. You just take your knife and kind of open up the spaces between the drill holes, and pretty soon you've got yourself an opening to work with. Cutting through this plastic and opening up this area, you can imagine that the edges are not very, well, they're not very pretty, let's put it that way. Matter of fact, they're pretty rough. So I'll take a little bit of time here with some small files, just even up all those edges, smooth everything out, get everything looking all nice and tidy here. It doesn't take very long at all for that to work out. So like I said, it's an old school method, but it doesn't take very much time and the results are more than satisfactory. Well, this poor guy, this poor vehicle, he's going to have quite a story to tell. And I thought, well, at least one side, I'm not sure about both sides, but at least one side is going to have no tracks on it. So I thought, you know, they'll be exposed and we could rough those up a bit and give that, again, a little bit of sense of this aging and wear and kind of desolation where this poor vehicle has been just put out to pasture, put out in the middle of the sand patch, just left out there to bake in the sunshine. Even with all these little deviations and distractions along the way here, this kit does go together so very quickly. So already I've got the suspension arms in place. Now it's time to mate up the lower and the upper hull parts together here. Get those in there, they just kind of snap in place. We'll add a little bit of glue and we can keep moving on. Well, let's check back with our inspiration photos. As you can tell from this photograph and this next photograph that many of these vehicles are missing part of their fenders, the rear part of the fender here especially. So I thought, well, let's add that feature here as well. So went ahead and scored the plastic on the fender, just broke it off, very easy to do. But I need a little bit of a bracket here, so I'll just use a bit of white styrene, just a little plastic strip, cut it to the right length, add a few drill holes in there to replicate the missing screws or bolts, and then we'll just glue that into place. Super easy detail to add. Well, since we're working on the fenders, I just could not resist the temptation to show a little more wear and tear on the existing fenders and just bending up some of those plastic using my flat pliers. They could squeeze and twist a bit. Just careful not to tear the plastic, but you can kind of get some crinkle in there, put a little life and personality to these. And once I have my banged up fenders ready to go, just a bit of glue on the edges here and to slot those into place. And yep, this is getting together very quickly. Okay, let's take another look at our reference here. And one of the things that I see on all these photographs, every one of these vehicles, I guess it's a periscope cover or some sort of a sensor cover on the top of the turret there, that little round shape. Well, that's supposed to have kind of a dome on top of that, but they're missing on every one of these reference photographs. So whatever that is, you guys help me in the chat below. Tell me what that was, but it was obviously important enough that all these vehicles had it removed before they're sent out to the sandbox here. So I want to replicate that as well on this vehicle. But in order to do that, I do need to do a bit more surgery here. So I've taken my time and made a little hole in the side of the turret there, opened up that little space. And now I need to kind of make the fittings, the little rings and stuff that are around there. So just use a bit of styrene tube, cut off some small pieces, small wafers, kind of even them out a little bit on the sanding stick, get them down to the right size and thickness there, and just stick that in place. And once it's in the right place, just secure it with a little drop or two of glue. Other fun things to do on the sides of the turret are some petrol cans or jerry can racks. Of course, the kit comes with one molded together rack and can together. Of course, the cans are not going to be there for sure. The racks on most of these are gone as well, but I thought an empty rack would look kind of fun and kind of give that desolation kind of a feel to it. So I just went ahead and scratch built a few of those out of white styrene. And then the most tricky part of this entire project is the rear turret basket or the stowage basket. It's not really tricky. You just need to take your time on it. But the photo etch is a little bit of a pain to work with. So I went ahead and annealed it with a candle there just to soften it up a bit so I can get around these corners a bit easier. And then as my usual practice, especially on fine mesh, a little drop in the burnishing fluid just to kind of darken that color up. And then it's just a matter of building up the basket and then kind of finessing those photo etch parts into place. Like I said, it's not hard to do. It's just a little bit fiddly. You just need to take your time and you should have no problem here. I wish to say thank you to my Patreon. Those are the names that you see scrolling on the screen right now. And these people help make this channel work. If you enjoy this channel and would like to support it, please consider joining Patreon. The link is in the description below. In return, early viewing of these videos, special Patreon-only videos, photographs of these projects ongoing, a Discord server where we can show off our work and have chats. Please consider joining Patreon. Thank you very much. Now, this is probably an unnecessary step because the kit, there's a nice cast texture on the hull and the turret here. So this is maybe unnecessary, but it's kind of fun and it looks cool in photographs. So just using Mr. Surfacer, stippling on some texture. It's not a heavy texture I'm putting on here, just to give it a little bit more life, a little more bounce to the texture, and I think it will look good under paint. The next item that I wanted to address were those dust covers or the rain boots that are around the main armament and the top turret machine gun. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the one around the main gun, leave that as the molded plastic part. I'm just kind of dress that a little bit, kind of rough it up a bit. But the one on the machine gun on the top here, I really wanted something that wasn't quite so pristine, so nice looking. That molded piece just looked too factory new. So I'm just going to use the tissue paper soaked with white glue, kind of form it around the gun here as if it's just kind of still there, but in some tatters. Hopefully this will kind of bring out some of that kind of Boneyard feeling that we're trying to do here. And really, this is the last detail I really want to add as we're getting into finishing up with the construction here. Everything else is just a matter of following the kit parts or kit instructions and assembly. So now we're ready to start painting. Onward to the painting. Here we go. Everything has a layer of Mr. Surfacer 1200 as the primer layer. And now I'm going to try to do something. There's going to be some method here, some madness here. Hopefully there'll be a madness and a method to my madness and everything will work out. We'll see how it goes. But basically I want to try to tell a story with the pre-shading. So my basic thought is this. This vehicle started out at some point camouflaged in the green colors, you know, the NATO colors or whatever it might have been, and then repainted into the Desert Murdoch scheme. So I want to be able to chip down through these layers and expose different layers underneath, if possible. This is where the big if comes in. So what I'll do here is basically put some random colors here of these various shades and tones. So brown colors, some green colors, some rust tones, some lighter base colors, some lighter desert base colors. And if I can expose those through some hairspray chipping, we'll get some interesting patina here. At least that's my thought. We'll see how it all goes. But as you can see, I've got my first layer down. We've got some nice brown tones there. A lot of pre-shading, took care of a lot of those shadow corners, things like that. Now, this is an interesting look for sure, but it's too dark and too heavy. But that's on purpose because we wanted to put those deeper shadows in there and have those areas of darker color that to maybe chip down through. But now I want to add some highlights. And for that, I'm using Ice Yellow, AK Gen 3 Ice Yellow, and just adding some, again, post-shading, but these are post-shade highlights. And I think that this base, these tones, these darks and lights will really help add to some interesting effects once we get down to adding the camouflage. Now, keeping with my story, again, this vehicle started out its life in green camouflage and now has gone into the desert camouflage. So I want to expose some of those areas of green. And a lot of those reference photographs show just that very fact. I'm being a little bit more precise, I guess, into some of the areas where I'm adding the green because there are areas here, you'll see this in just a minute, where I'm going to mask off and really expose those areas in greater detail where parts are missing or something like that has happened to these as they've been relegated to the sandbox. And then finally, let's just round up this color mashup here with a few rust tones. Now I'm going fairly limited with the rust tones because even in looking at those reference photographs, you'll notice that because of the hot, dry environment where these vehicles are being stored, there's not a lot of rust. There's chips and things like that, of course, but they're not just rusting hulks in the desert. So not a lot of rust at this stage of the game. We'll add some more specific highlights of rust later on as we start working into weathering. But there we go. Now, that's quite the pre-shade. And like I said, the idea here is that I want to be able to perhaps expose some of this as we work through the process through some chipping. So let's see how that's going to work out. Well, of course, we'll need to add our chipping fluid. And in this case, I am using just hairspray. I've decanted that into my airbrush. I'm applying 3, I'd call them medium layers of hairspray. And I'm purposely a little heavy on the hairspray this time, the chipping fluid, because I'm going to be using AK Real Colors and they have a lot of grab. They are very durable. So I'm trying to give enough, of the chipping fluid underneath it so I actually get this to actually work out. While this hairspray dries, let's take a look at some of these references. And here's those little details of green showing through, areas where pieces of the equipment have been taken off, or some of the green camouflage is being exposed. And even here on this green camouflage tank, you can see the little stowage locker to the top left corner where that's been removed. Well, I'm going to add that feature on my vehicle as well. So here we go. Here's a stowage locker from the kit, just using that as a template. Just putting some tape on the back side just to cut it to size. This is a quick and easy way to do masking, eh? But as you can see on the side of the turret there, that's one of those areas where I went ahead and added some extra green there just so because I knew that I wanted to do this, so I was just preparing this area with that green undertone underneath it. And then on this locker on the back as well, that one's going to be missing. And once again, I've purposely added the green on the fender there, and now we'll just go ahead and add this mask there. And if you recall from those initial photographs that we just looked at, a lot of those areas underneath those grenade launchers, well, the grenade launchers or the smoke launchers have been removed, and the brackets themselves still remain in the green color. And then finally, one last area to mask off, and that would be where we removed the drive wheel, so that where that plate's been removed. I went ahead as before, just prepared that area by spraying that with a nice primer type color. And now I just need to make a quick mask there, just kind of using my knife, the tip of my knife, just to cut around the edge of that area and remove the mask, and we should be ready to go here. And now with all of this, we have done the construction, the deconstruction, the paint preparation. We made this model look like something from Willy Wonka, but it's all in a good cause because next episode we'll be able to tackle the painting itself. So we'll add the base colors, we'll add the camouflage scheme, we'll do some weathering, of course, and maybe we'll get as far as the base. I'm not quite sure how far we'll get, but that's all coming up. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like and subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel even further, I do have that Patreon. It is in the description below. Check out that link, and I'd like to see you over there. Until the next episode, everybody, take care, and of course, happy modeling.